Excellent. And last high level before we dig in more into the stack and the vendors. Niraj, what was the driving use case for you guys? I know you might be a little bit further, I mean, not as far along as your panelists here, but what's the main reason for you to be kind of adopting more of the next generation data warehousing projects?
So we wanted to, move to the cloud, have these offerings to our customers through an online portal, and be able to, capture more business, right? Have proper risk management when we're issuing policies. So be able to, have the more data we have, the better decisions we're able to make. So that was a strategic driving, force for us.
All right, so it sounds like the majority of them were actually customer-driven versus, self-serving analytics. But all right, so we're going to go in a little bit and decide which you had chosen. Glenn, we'll start with you. What kind of stack alignment have you gone with? I remember there was a while back, Glenn, you and I were talking about you had on-prem with Teradata. You were kicking around the different cloud providers. You and I have spoken about Snowflake, and obviously it's never a one-fits-all solution. But I would love to hear about what you kind of decided to go with, align with, and why.
Yeah, we ended up actually with Snowflake. Actually, that's not a surprise. Actually, when we evaluated actually all the different vendors and the capabilities that they provide and the integration, some of the components that we really look is more around enabling my analytical connection that we have. Not just only a Snowflake, but we have Databricks, for example. That's another component that is creating me this decoupling situation and enabling more my AI and ML piece. So Snowflake is the chosen one. It was the chosen one actually where we move. There are many benefits we can talk about. Really, the traditional decoupling, the control plane and the data plane, the scalability that is providing, the alignment that you can have actually have control plane in one cloud provider, data plane in multiple cloud providers, so you can split those loads and you can balance based on pricing capabilities or speed or geolocation that you need to have, many other components. And that's one of the reasons where we went to then. And there are many others related really with the strategy to start enabling more the AI and ML capabilities that is driven through Databricks in our case. And really start marketing that and segregating between what the data lake, for example, and the Delta Lake that Databricks provide, and the insulation that we need to create in our Snowflake from not just only analytical data, but as well from operational and transactional data. So there were some considerations around optimization of performance, which loads do we want to hit where, and that's how we split it actually, that decision.
There's a lot there. We probably could go down that path for a while. But so I do want to ask one quick follow-up, because you said you eventually chose kind of Snowflake for it. Are you combining Snowflake with one of the cloud providers, or are you being agnostic? Is it sort of Snowflake with Redshift? Is it Snowflake with BigQuery? Is it Snowflake with Azure Synapse? Or are you just sort of cloud agnostic?
It is cloud agnostic, considering that we are really multi-cloud. We decide to go cloud agnostic and has the ability actually to move the loads actually from a data plane perspective between the different cloud providers. Instead of saying, yeah, I want to be using, for example, Redshift from a data plane perspective and then Snowflake from the control plane perspective. We decide to go agnostic in that space.
All right, thank you, Glenn. We just had a submitted question that came to me, and I'm going to ask it because at least I know you have some Teradata experience. But if anyone else does, please chime in afterwards, okay? So we had somebody ask, any existing or past Teradata customers that were more likely to switch to Vantage now that they have it offered? Or is it pretty much that Snowflake and the hyperscalers are going to remain preferred? Basically, is Teradata going to have any chance of retaining your business with Vantage?
Yeah, let me jump in that one, because I evaluated actually Vantage and I have the experience with Vantage in that space. The benefit that I saw is really, yes, they are offering you the control plane and the data plane actually that you can have with Snowflake, and you can start splitting those loads. but the integration that Snowflake offers from a Databricks perspective way past what really Teradata Advantage is offering you in that component. And the other thing that I consider really is the technology roadmap that both companies are offering you. If you think through,
I'm on the phone.
yeah. It was Martin. so the advantage actually from the technology perspective actually and the roadmap that is saying Snowflake started with the data warehousing. Now it's start embracing more really the analytical space. So there is a really interesting competition around what really Databricks and Snowflake is providing in that space. But the capabilities from an advantage perspective, it has the strongest one that I see is just only the alignment. If you are a current Teradata in your own premises, they have a really nice tool to migrate all the data sets actually to the Vantage service that they are offering you. And that's a huge consideration when you are thinking about that. If you want to go through the whole rationalization process from recognizing and identifying what are all those data sets that you are going to be moving, the data transfer that you need to do from a data warehousing, or if you can use that one. But in our case, we decide to go agnostic. The benefits that Vantage was providing was not strong enough actually from the analytical perspective compared to what Snowflake has in the roadmap.
That's a great answer, Glenn. I do appreciate it. Anyone else want to weigh in on that? I remember there was a while back, there was an American Airlines Fortune 100 community member who said that Teradata was amazing because whenever they had to do a huge shift of their data, a transfer of their data, that it just never broke. But like for more modern use cases, he never really thought that it was going to come into play. And as we see here with our data, it still just remains, to be, probably the worst performing set in all of the data warehousing names. But anyone else want to add on or take a different tact on what Glenn had to say about their ability to keep up, or even any of the other legacy names as we look at Oracle and IBM as well?
I mean, we're ripping out all of our Oracle. I mean, we're going through a massive migration because, simply put, I mean, Oracle Cloud or their cloud solution for the database infrastructure is just, it's inferior to, AWS, Google, and Microsoft. And I know very little customers that are switching from Oracle to on-premise Oracle to Oracle Cloud. For us, we're migrating to MySQL and BigQuery, and we're a big DataStax customer, and we're moving to Astra in the cloud as well. So they're, quite frankly, I think, the ship has sailed for a lot of these legacy players, and it's only a matter of time before they're not going to be relevant in the enterprise any longer. That's my view.
I appreciate that, Marty. Do you mind if I do a quick follow-up? Because you had a name.
Yeah, sure.
I'm interested in DataStax. So I switched over on this screen, guys, is our emerging technology study. This is the one where we do non-public, names, more of the emerging vendors. And when you pull up here and you basically click on plan to evaluate, DataStax has really good mind share and net sentiment with you and your peers. I don't get to hear a lot about it. Could you maybe talk a little bit about why you're utilizing it, and what you like about it, so everyone else can hear?
Yeah, we use DataStax for basically high volume transactional based applications within our environment. Like our booking and our checkout engines are all powered by DataStax, as well as a lot of our checkout flows as well. So it's a highly performant, highly scalable, fast volume, high IO based data architecture. And with their new Astra platform, you're able to run it in a multi-cloud scenario with full redundancy, which is just amazing. They have really good support, operations, and management tools in the NoSQL space. So we love it.
I really appreciate that. We don't get a lot of feedback on that name, so thank you. I'm going to jump back here and start talking to maybe a little bit the cloud players themselves. They all have great offerings, and clearly what we've decided is that's why Teradata and Oracle has the data that we're seeing. Is there a strong differentiation between aligning yourself with Redshift or aligning yourself with BigQuery, or what used to be called hosted SQL, and I think they're now calling Synapse Stack? Is there a big difference, guys, when you talk about GCP, AWS, and Microsoft, Jim, let me ask you first.
I think the differences between the three major cloud data warehouse or database providers that you're talking about is really feature function differences, and I think they're minor. I think that the big important thing to keep in mind is how close are your other workloads to these providers? Because if you are collecting a massive amount of data, it's not a it's not a long haul to, if you're in Azure, to put it all into Microsoft, and same thing with AWS and Google. So I think that's one important consideration. For us, it was really a choice of moving from Redshift to Snowflake for the reasons of ease of implementation, the functionality that called out Redshift from Snowflake was different file formats that we could bring in easily into Snowflake. And then the third was really the security, encryption at rest. Snowflake just provided that feature a lot better than Redshift. There was no performance impact. It was just pretty automatic.
I appreciate that very much. We don't usually get the chance to talk about the security aspects of the data itself. Maybe we'll have some time for that in a bit. Niraj, I'm going to ask you real quickly, sir, because you did mention earlier on that you do have some on-prem workloads, and they're probably likely going to need to stay there for not only regulatory reasons, but just some of the legacy applications that insurance always has, right? You can't really. Your company's been around for a long time. So when we talk about data warehousing and modernizing that with those necessary aspects of regulation and on-prem enterprise applications, where do you go? Who are you utilizing for the on-prem aspect? How are you managing that, Niraj?
So we're a big Microsoft shop, and we're using a lot of the Microsoft SQL products, and we already have an existing data warehouse that we have built, and we're utilizing that heavily for the and we have differentiated the regulated stuff, the stuff that needs to stay on-prem, and the stuff that where we see value adding, we're going to you're using Snowflake a lot, right? And it just a lot easier, quicker, has all the features, and we're also using Azure and AWS as well in the cloud. So like the teams that are already familiar in using AWS, and they're using AWS, and a lot of our teams, right, that were on Microsoft, very easily be able to shift to Azure or Snowflake.
Okay, and did you think you're generally just sort of aligned that way because your on-prem was already Microsoft, that the next modern generation you're going with is going to be hosted with Azure?
Correct, because of the connectivity and all the other applications.